Yo, what is going on, guys? I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to be ranking my top 5 favorite lightsaber duels in all of Star Wars. So there's a bunch of lightsaber duels in Star Wars, and it was honestly really hard to narrow it down to just 5. I had to swap out a couple times just because I wasn't sure which I wanted, but I finally made a decision, and so yes, I'm going to give you my top 5 favorite lightsaber duels in all of Star Wars. Now, I do want to mention right now before I get into it, I am a huge prequels fan, so to be honest with you, all of these fights, all of these duels are from the prequel era. I do love the original trilogy movies, but their duels are really boring in my opinion, and they're just, I mean, they were made in the 70s and the 80s, so I mean, they were cool for their time, but when you compare them to, you know, duels nowadays, it's just a lot different, and you can't really compare them in my opinion. And as far as the sequels go, I don't really like the Star Wars sequels. So that's a whole other subject. I'm not going to get into that, but so those are also not on here. I do have an honorable mention that I do want to point out is the duel between Luke and Vader in Return of the Jedi. I didn't include it on my top 5 list, but I did want to mention that it is a very meaningful duel. I didn't include it because I feel like you can judge a duel on two different things. One, how cool it looked visually, you know, and how much you enjoyed it. And then two, how much the duel actually means and how much it affects the story. And I feel like the Luke versus Vader one in Return of the Jedi is one of those duels that really hit you, you know, emotionally, and it affects the story in a great way, you know, with Luke redeeming Vader in the end and making Vader come back to the light as Anakin. So that was a really meaningful duel in that sense. But as far as like actually visually and, you know, how cool it looked, I guess, so to speak, it didn't really hit home. But yeah, that duel is an honorable mention for me for sure, and I did want to point that out. I am going to be ranking them from my least favorite out of the 5 all the way to 1, so we're going to start with number 5. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. At number 5, I have Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn fighting Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace, Episode 1. That duel was so freaking cool, and that was our first time seeing Darth Maul, and it shocked everyone, just the way he looks. He's so menacing, you know, the Phantom Menace, no pun intended. He was super cool. It was also our first time seeing a double-sided lightsaber, so to see that in action was, you know, awesome. The choreography was amazing, with especially my favorite part of that duel is actually towards the end of that sequence, is when it's just Obi-Wan fighting Darth Maul, is after Qui-Gon died, spoiler alert. But it's just when they're two fighting, that part is just so good to me, and it's so fast-paced and intense, and I've always loved that fight. So that is at my number 5 spot. At number 4, I have Ahsoka versus Darth Vader from Star Wars Rebels. This duel is honestly a very meaningful one, and one that actually looked really cool. When I first saw this, it was really, it's really emotional because, you know, seeing Anakin's old apprentice fight him. You know, we never really thought that would happen. To see Ahsoka face her former master, and then her seeing him, you know, on the dark side as Darth Vader, is just really sad. And then once she, you know, slices Darth Vader's mask, and then part of it is like damaged, you can see Anakin's eye. And then the whole dialogue between them is just so heartbreaking. And with Matt Lanter's voice with James Earl Jones' voice mixed together, saying Ahsoka.
Anakin.
With the mask broken, it's just really crazy, and it's a really good scene, a really good fight overall. Really love that. At number 3, I have Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Kenobi series. This one I really loved. It was honestly probably like the best part of the entire Kenobi series. I feel like they could have done a lot more with that series, but that's a whole other topic. But as far as the duel goes, it was honestly really beautiful, and I liked the way the colors were and how much like the lightsabers stuck out in the scene, how bright they were and stuff. The whole duel was honestly just intense. They really went back and forth, like when Obi-Wan was pushed from Darth Vader into that big old hole in the ground, when Vader put like his force energy into the ground and cracked it open, you know, basically was just burying Obi-Wan with all the rocks piling on top of him. That was just really intense. And then Vader had the high ground for once in his life in that scene. And then the part where Obi-Wan comes back and he's throwing all these boulders at Vader just like crazy. And then the same thing happened with Ahsoka, where she broke Vader's mask off. Obi-Wan did the same thing, except it was the other side of the helmet. In timeline, that actually happened before Vader and Ahsoka's duel, because Obi-Wan Kenobi series takes place 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, and Rebels takes place like right before A New Hope, so like 18 years after Revenge of the Sith. So that happens like 8 years before, you know, the duel with Ahsoka and Vader. But yeah, so that just shows you Anakin's brother, his old, you know, his friend, his master. Obi-Wan couldn't get Anakin back to the light. Not even Ahsoka could get Anakin back to the light. It had to be his son. It had to be Luke. And it's just a very tragic and sad story. And, you know, once he comes back to the light, he dies right away. So it's like, okay, well, at least he came back at the very last moment. He didn't die a Sith. He didn't die an evil person. I mean, he did a lot of evil things. He kind of was an evil person, but he didn't he didn't die when he was still evil. So whatever, you get what I mean. So yeah, that is at my number 3 spot. My number 2 is Ahsoka versus Darth Maul. And as you can tell, a lot of these names are recurring, and I didn't mean to do that. That's just how it happened to be. These are just my favorite duels, and they include these characters. I apologize for, you know, not having much diversity among these duels. But yeah, Ahsoka versus Darth Maul in the Clone Wars Season 7 Siege of Mandalore arc, which was absolutely amazing. The duel between them is so good, and it's so fluid, and I just love the way it looks, because this duel was actually motion captured. So Ray Park actually reprised his role as Darth Maul and did all the mocap work for it. But yeah, it just looks stunning. You know, the Ahsoka having dual sabers against Darth Maul with a double-bladed lightsaber. You don't see that really. So it was super awesome to see that, and it all just came together beautifully. My number 1 favorite lightsaber duel in all of Star Wars, which I'm pretty sure most of you are assuming it's gonna be this. It is Obi-Wan versus Anakin on Mustafar in Revenge of the Sith. So that is my favorite duel. It is so good. I don't really need to say much about it. It's just so fast-paced, so intense. I know I've said that a lot throughout this whole video, but it's just, how else are you supposed to explain lightsaber duels? They're all so crazy and action-packed. The one versus Obi-Wan and Anakin in Revenge of the Sith was just so crazy. There was so much emotion going through Anakin, so much anger. And, you know, that was the turning point of the whole story, really. You know, Anakin turned into the dark side, and he was just so full of rage, and he was so arrogant. You know, in the end, that's why Obi-Wan beat Anakin, was because of how arrogant Anakin was. Because technically, Anakin is a lot more powerful than Obi-Wan. You know, his midichlorian count is through the roof. It was just, he was so full of himself and impatient and, like I said, so arrogant, and it got to him.
You underestimate my power!
And that is the reason why Obi-Wan beat him, because Obi-Wan can control himself. And so yeah, that duel is just absolutely insane. The end is emotional.
You were my brother, Anakin! I loved you!
That's another one of those duels that was really cool, and it was very impactful. You know, the climax of the Skywalker saga. So definitely my favorite one. We'll see if anything ever tops that. I feel like nothing ever will, to be honest, but you never know. That is my top 5 favorite lightsaber duels, fights in all of Star Wars. Let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, comment down below what your favorite lightsaber duels are. I'm very curious. But until next time, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in my next video.